Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to FMA Discussion. This is episode 441. We're in the 400s already. So today we have Tom Sotis. So today's going to be a little different. We're not really be talking about Tom's bio necessarily from start to present day, although we'll touch on some things, of course, throughout the conversation. But today's really going to be talking about why he decided to create AMOK, his transplant to Florida, what he's doing down there, his future goals, and a future camp, including me. So we're talking about that good stuff. So if you're watching, tell us where you're watching from. Smash that like button. If you have questions for Tom, please let us know in there. Now, for his bio episodes, if you want to get more on his background and throughout his journey, I highly recommend episodes 1, 3, kind of a part 1, part 2, episodes 1 and 3, and episode 31, which covers this book. Highly recommend. Okay. So that's episode 31 again on his book. And he was on another one with Darren and all that. But if you really want to get a good essence of his bio, go to episodes 1 and 3. And the book again, episode 31. So I am so excited to have him. I can't tell you how much a profound effect he's had on my journey, the things I do present day, not just martial arts, just everything, the way I look at everything. And, it totally goes back to him. Genius in methodology, context before methodology. And you'll hear him speak on that. Tom also is by far my biggest fan as far as instructors. He has been so supportive in everything, and I will be a trainer for life. I just so much gratitude towards him, and so excited to have him on. So without further ado, here's the man himself in Florida, enjoying that weather. Hey there.
Hi, Dean. And hello.
So rough down there. You left us in New England and you went to Florida.
I escaped Rhode Island. That's the term I'm using. I escaped.
Not left.
Look, I miss my family and friends and students, of course, but I don't miss Rhode Island one iota.
I bet you don't. Or nor the weather and the taxes and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
And the bad roads.
Yeah. I know. Wow. So you heard kind of the intro as far as we're going to cover today. We'll get into your transplant and what you got going on there and for the few months you've been there and what you like to see as far as the future. But really what I want to go into is a post I made in FMV Discussion for a theme episode, just trying to trigger some response and enthusiasm what people felt as far as why folks create their own system. What was the rationale? What was the incentive, inspiration? And, because I went through all that, but really you were a pioneer, and in my opinion, in the knife world when you went ahead and embarked on this, what you created. So what was the inspiration of why you chose to do it?
Well, thank you. That's a good question, Dean. I appreciate that. I started martial arts in 1969. And so, I had been around for quite a while before I had decided to do my own thing. And a couple of reasons for that. Number one, excuse me. Number one was politics. I started seeing that there's politics everywhere you go, and I just didn't want any part of that. And I thought, hey, if I end up practicing in my own backyard with 2 other guys for the rest of my life, so be it. But that was the initial thing, is I just wanted to avoid all of that. I wanted to be on a path of growth and learning and improvement. And I didn't want it to be stunted or then dictated by anybody else who could limit what I was going to learn and how I was going to learn or who I was going to learn from or any of that comes along with it. So that's why, AMOK came about. And it's why we have no rank and title in AMOK, because I believe those things are footholds of all martial politics. Without rank and title, what's left? The skill and brotherhood. And that becomes really, and I always tell people, look, if that's all we have to offer is skill and brotherhood, and if that's not enough, then you should look elsewhere, because that's all you'll find here. So that was the impetus to that. And of course, part of it was methodology too, is seeing that one method after another was more drills, more drills, more drills, more drills. But it didn't seem to, all the plateaus that come along with the way that they were drilling, it wasn't leading to the levels of skill and development functionality that I was looking for. And then that became the other thing. So in terms of politics, we see that most systems are like a pyramid with the students at the bottom, and then the instructors, and then the masters and grand poobah at the top. And the most powerful personalities and people that stayed in the systems longest, the masters, they would all be pushed into this tiny little space and competing with each other for belts and ranks, and that's where a lot of it becomes untenable eventually, and then it would fracture, and somebody would break off and start their own thing, and they would rip part of that house apart, and all of that would go along with it. So I inverted that whole thing from the pyramid into a funnel, where I said, well, you know what? AMOK trainers, instructors, our job will be to get people up through the stem of that funnel, that's the core skills. And then from there, you can play around in that funnel all that you want for as long as you want. And that the open top of that meant that you could continue developing for the rest of your life. And also the open top meant if you wanted to do your own thing, you could jump out and then you could start your own thing, whether you want to start another funnel or you want to start a pyramid, that's up to you. But you didn't have to rip out our house to do it. Randy Hodges was the first person to do that, where I finally said to him, hey, Rands, have you thought about doing your own thing? And he's like, but I want to be an AMOK. And I said, look, you'll be an AMOK for life. You're still my brother. You just won't live in our house. So, and he started his own thing. And you're another example of that. You come along, you learn your core skills, soon to be an instructor, and you're doing your own thing. And I always encourage people to do that. I did that. It would be hypocritical not to encourage others to do it and to offer them the ability to do it, not just in words but in deed and in the structure that actually provides for that. And that was the first thing about avoiding the politics and making sure that the guys that come on board, they can be in the family for life and still go do their own thing. When you're a parent, you raise your children, you want them to eventually go out and live their own lives, not to live in your house for the rest of their life. And that's how I felt about that.
Just music to my ears. I mean, just, again, the breath of fresh air. I'll never forget when I first met you, buying Bob, had no idea, like, I'd be barking after, buying. It was the best. Tell folks it was the best 180, including gas, I ever spent in my lifetime. And that I'll never forget it in your garage, when you put on the whiteboard, I was speechless. I'm just like, I'm sold. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. Sold. I'm in, because it was just a breath of fresh air. The things that you're speaking on revolving around the individual and not this pyramid that you reference where, you're trying to get to the top and then there's fractures and there's, and just the overall encouragement you give to the trainers and all that is why I think you're so beloved, from us in there. And that whole aspect, which I also think is refreshing, is when you speak about that, like, okay, go do your own thing. Like, even though I'm doing my own thing, I will always be a part of AMOK. Like, I will always have you as a guide, a mentor, a teacher. I don't want to leave. I just, and I think it's all due to you. And we got two of my brothers here, John Kuspis, Big John, and Walter, Scary John.
And, right on, both of those guys. Hey guys, good to see everybody here.
Yeah, we got Norman, Brett,
John and Wally. We've been together as brothers for 25, 30 years. I mean, a long time.
Yeah,
a long time.
Eric O'Brien. Eric in Naples.
Oh yeah, right. I've talked with Eric as well. Yeah, because he's
Crazy
also
Eric. Yeah, Eric needs to. And we got Ken Jowers. All right, folks. Again, folks, if you got questions for Tom, please let me know. Put them in the right-hand column, and I'll be sure to get them asked. So with all that, okay, so that's your, your reasoning, your inspiration why you did it. You didn't like the current status quo in the community. You wanted to be different from that. How was it initially received? Like, did you go through some problematic areas as far as selling this? Because such a different approach and mindset that you were offering to the community. Any troubles there?
Not really, because I've never tried to sell it. I just figured when the other guys got sick of politics or the non-functionality and plateaus they were dealing with, they would find us. And that's the other reason, is that the non-functionality, or I should say the dysfunction of the methods, where you start with training and then you go to practice, and it's not really a direct correlation most times, and then the practices don't even really resemble the fight at all. To me, that was a problem. And, for most people, if you're an enthusiast and you're there to learn the art, well, that's not an issue. But I wasn't an enthusiast. I'm a functionalist. The prime directive is that we have to seek greater functionality. And when we find it, we must adapt it and adopt to that because lives are at stake. And when people come in the door, they expect you to teach the best of what you know, not second best because you like doing that other thing. So
Yeah.
again, if you're an enthusiast, that's perfectly fine. But when you're teaching blade work and lives are at stake, to me, our value system dictates that the task dictates how we have to train. When you look at traditionalists who are preservationists, they should never change their art because that would be like taking a beautiful old vase out of the ground and thinking that you were going to repaint it and fix the cracks. You would spoil its
Mm.
value. So when the traditionalist tells me they fixed the system, I can only think that they've ruined it. Traditionalists, if you look at it on their value system, they don't have a choice about how they train. And you shouldn't. That's not what it's about. And on the other end of that spectrum are functionalists, pure functionalists, where we don't have a choice either. It's dictated by the task.
Mm.
Everybody in between is somewhere of an enthusiast. And you know what? They can do it. They want to do what they enjoy doing. And there's nothing wrong with that. For me, I just feel that if you're going to teach knife work and it's not fully functional and you can't prove it and work it in real time, then maybe you would want to rethink that. Unless when you present it to people, you say to them, well, look, it's not fully functional. It's the art form of that. And that's how we practice it. And if you do so, you're maintaining your honor and your integrity, and it's fine to share it in that way. But if
Mm.
somebody's looking for life-saving skill and you can't prove it, well, then that's a different story. And when I say prove it, I mean when you're fighting and sparring against everybody else, not against the compliant attacks where you know what's coming and when,
Mhm.
or when somebody is utilizing what I call the cooperative blade, where they're giving you the attacks and you can see it and they go along with it and they're learning, and that's not to me the real deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and that's why, like, when you say, well, why did you start AMOK? Well, number one, it was to avoid the politics, but number two is because I wanted functionality to be the goal. So it was, when you come, it's not about learning AMOK. AMOK is the tool of your personal development to achieve invincibility. And of course, we mean temporary invincibility, where for moments at a time you can have perfect performance. Our desire is to understand the tactics, which you can learn all the tactics on the very first day.
Yeah.
And then from there on in, it's about your performance. And so that's what AMOK is all about. And we've designed it to be that way. And that's why all we really offer is skill and brotherhood.
Yeah. You touched
And it's
upon something that,
backwards from everybody else because we feel that what's happening in the fight should then dictate how you practice and train. Practice and training should be utilized to fix the functional errors that you have when you're fighting.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's why it's a very, very different approach. And I couldn't really find that type of approach anywhere else. Though I always have to give credit to Dave Gould for his inspiration, because years ago, Dave, when I was training, and right, and look, Dave wrote the manifesto of training, and I remember printing that out and putting it up in my garage and yellow lining things, and one line connecting to another, and I really took to heart the principles that he shared with me, because when you get in front of Dave and you have your first lessons with Dave, you know right away that you know what you're looking
I
at.
have no idea what you're talking about.
Right. And so immediately right off, I had said, look, there's something special going on here. And when I wasn't working with Dave as often as I would like to, I started needing to absorb those principles and to live by them. And those principles were the foundation upon which I built AMOK. And by the way, a few years ago, Dave and I did a combined camp together for a
Which was
weekend.
wonderful.
And and in the end, he said to me, "Wow, I haven't seen AMOK for a lot of years." He said, "But you did a great job with the method and how you bring people along in his presentation, and getting that validation from Dave meant everything to me, because it
Oh my
meant
God.
that I was trying to get there. I just took a different route up the mountain."
Yeah,
So
he's
that's the main difference of AMOK.
yeah,
So
well
I
said. I mean, one of the things never forget you touched upon what you said here, and was that whole integrity to self, honesty to others and your students, meaning like that whole thing with the functionality when you're doing knife work, giving them the best due to, what do you call it? Pressure testing, science lab, whatever, however you want to coin it, as far as the process and the methodology. But I thought that really spoke to me and I'll never forget that when you said that. Integrity to self, honesty to others. And I thought that was so profound, and what you just mentioned here. Yeah, Dave's an acquired taste.
Yeah, if you acquire the taste for pain, sure.
Pain.
But look, every painful lesson is your teacher, you know.
Pain distraction, part of the syllabus. But we got,
that integrity and honesty thing is important, and that's why we say AMOK will stab the ego right out of you. Because look, I don't care how good you were last year or last month or last week or even 5 seconds ago. When you're fighting, you are in the moment, and your performance in the moment means everything. And you can go up in the moment and you could be the most skilled guy on earth. And if you take just one moment of distraction and the other guy hits you, you're dead. So it's only how good you can maintain your performance in the moment. And that becomes so important to what we do. And that's another reason we don't have rank and title. What do you do if a guy comes in on his first day and you square off and he hits you first? Tell him you have to call me master? Really?
Yeah, I know. I know. Like, geez. Here's an interesting thing. And you brought this up to me before. I think it's going to kind of correlate what you're talking about, your vision and what you wanted. Because you mentioned a conversation with Francis Fong regarding JKD. And the comment here is, they're coming in, but at any rate, here we go. I'm going to find it. Okay. Seems akin to Bruce Lee's Jun Fan ideology in that. But when I saw this, it sparked a memory that you brought to me in a conversation about how Francis Fong, if I'm not mistaken, was crediting you with like the vision which Bruce had. Am I accurate in that?
Almost.
Okay.
First off, it was Leo Fong.
Oh my God, Leo. Okay.
And I was doing a seminar out in California, and I was giving the presentation on methodology during the break. And I looked up, and there he was sitting at the bench, and I was just speechless that he was there. And he just kind of went, oh. He's so humble and great. And afterwards, he asked me to go have coffee, and of course, I was thrilled. And so he said to me, he goes, what you did in there, he goes, that was really unique. I said, well, thank you. He goes, Bruce said, don't imitate, don't accumulate, but integrate. He goes, and really, he said that was the reason that he didn't want to name Jeet Kune Do, is he didn't want it to become crystallized into a system of drills that people learned this version of it or that version of it and then argued over whose version of it was better. He was really about integration. He said, and he didn't live long enough to have separated the method from the drills themselves, so to speak. And he goes, when he pointed his finger at the moon and said, don't look at the finger, look at that heavenly glory, he meant look at the principles of integration. And what he said to me was, it's like he talked to us about rocket science. He didn't live long enough. He said, but you built the rocket. And he goes, and it's just amazing. And so I sat there with my jaw open. I'm like, oh, sir, how do you feel about when a man like that makes that kind of a comment to you? And it just, as much as it was to get Guru Dave's validation for what I was doing, that as well really cemented it. And he wrote me a lot of really kind emails and things like that because we talked about that I'm on the path of integration. And, we use the knife to get there. But once you understand that, you can use any other handheld
flashlight, the palms. Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah. It's universal to that. So that was something that really helped me really know that I was on the right track for what I was doing. Because, and when I'm doing something so different than everyone else, of course, part of your validation is in the work itself. But you still have certain doubts.
Oh, of course. I 100% on that. That's a great point you brought up. Like, even though you're getting great feedback and you have a good feeling internally about what you're doing, there's always that premise and that cloud over you, like, well, who am I to be doing this? And you know what I mean? I think the self-doubt, Unfortunately, just as a side dish that comes along with it. But anybody that knows you and your integrity and what you've done, I mean, like, and that, and folks, if you're just jumping in, this is Tom Sotis of AMOK, my coach in AMOK. So again, if you got questions, let them rip. I think it all should be noted, though. Back to the pioneer aspect, like you, if I'm not mistaken, you were one of the first or the first pure nice system where even Tuan, RIP, like great Tuan Sayok, even consulted you. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, early on, I wanted just to focus just on blade work.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had this desire and this idea, I pretty much looked up every real master I ever trained with or that I knew that I respected, and I talked to them about it and asked their opinion. And without exception, every one of them said to me, "Oh, that would be a terrible idea." And in the end, I really thought I thanked them for their input, but I just thought that not one of them had any real vision.
Yeah.
And so that's, I really just wanted to do this path. And the other thing is that I never really had a school. I've done privates and seminars. I have my Sunday class a little bit. That's 2 Sundays a month, but that's not like running a commercial school.
Right.
And doing seminars, and at this point, I've done them in many, 25 countries, including the U.S. Working in South Africa and Cambodia, some of the tough places in the world where people challenge you right there on the floor in front of others, you have to know that you can make that work, and you have to get up and you got to stand behind it. Because if you don't accept the challenge and/or win, you will lose every student you ever had. They threaten your livelihood, your art, and everything. And look, they have nothing to lose because nobody expects them to win.
Yeah. Darren saying hi.
You have everything to lose. And I'll tell you what, especially in some of those places, when big guys, you should say, well, you couldn't do that to me. And how about if we really do it? And they go, are you challenging me? Do you want to do that? And, oh, yeah, let's do that. And I say, okay, that's why I make sure I bring 2 blades to my seminars. And I throw the blade on the floor and say, go ahead, pick it up. Let's do this. And then I'd whip out the live blade. And they're like, oh, I thought you were going to do that with a trainer. I go, look, that trainer has no stopping power, no fear behind it, none of the reality of the blade. You want to use the trainer so you can try to overpower me with your size and knock me down and say, oh, see, I got Sotis. But now all of a sudden it comes to the live blade and you're not so sure. Go ahead, pick it up. Okay, wow. So as soon as you bring it to that level, then you start knowing that's where I stand.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. That's wow. I know some of the stories you told me about South Africa and some of the guys that, that's just wow. And then you had some Russian stories there too, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, look, in '92, I was the 4th American to go deep inside of Russia after the wall came down. Ahead of me were 2 Jehovah's Witnesses and a guy who teaches breathing. And I was challenged by the Spetsnaz on the 3rd day. And I went in and I fought those guys, a whole bunch of those guys in one day. And then afterwards, I became the first American contractor to work there. Nice. And but the Russians, I got to say, they were the people themselves. They were really good to me, and the guys that I trained over there were really good to me, and they appreciated that. Also the newspaper there did an interview and said, what do you think of our fighters? And I said, well, I just come out of, their special forces room. And I said, well, there's 100 guys in there. I said, I think 99 of them can beat me up. And so they said, well, why would they want you to train them then? I said, well, because they're not only tough guys, but they're smart guys too. And I'm going to teach them how to beat me up even faster.
Wow. Such honesty, integrity. Wow. Yeah.
And look, I wasn't there to say I was the best. I was there to say, right. Well, you guys, I was there on a Marshall research expedition. All I wanted to do was learn and to research and find out what was going on there and what it was like. And, that was a real tough place to be.
Especially in a basement, if I recall you describing. Yeah, I would say that is, that's pretty bad. Oh, Eric. Pain is part of the syllabus. Yeah, Eric. I offer you anytime you want to go to Lake Mississippi. It's acquired taste. I told you Darren's Darren. Here we go. Yeah, he just wanted to quickly drop in
Oh,
and say hello. And to
hi,
you,
Darren.
yeah, another great guy, right? And yeah,
Yeah,
so
he's
but
looking smart. I like talking with Darren. I always learn a lot talking to him.
oh my God, I know. Yeah, another brainiac like you. So okay, so you're getting the wheels going, and you didn't really no issues. You weren't thinking of that. You were just going forward. No physical school. So I guess by the creating of the own system and all that, how did you get the word out? How did it spread? Because you mentioned like you gone to all these countries and all that. It sounds like it didn't take long to spread the word getting out there. How did that happen?
Well, mainly by word of mouth in the beginning, because Facebook didn't really come in until
I was
I
gonna
don't think
say,
I was
right?
on Facebook until 2009.
Okay. Yeah, right.
So
Yeah, and this is way before that.
after that, I mean, it spread even more because of
Yeah.
it. But before that, I had been around quite a bit. But it was mainly it was by word of mouth.
Wow. How much, jeez, man. I mean, that's pretty incredible because, like you said, I mean, there wasn't a social media presence. I mean, and Black Belt magazine, I mean, like what most people were utilizing as far as getting the word out, whatever they were doing. But outside of that, it's not like you had a lot of vehicles for advertisement, right?
No, I
Um,
really didn't. And like that's the first 10 or 11 years. There was no
mm.
social media. So,
So,
uh, well,
huh?
before that though, I have to say there were some forums. The forums
Form.
were
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
okay, and so I was working a lot with the Suarez International Shooters Group, and I had gone out there because that guy Gabe was like really into functionality.
Hmm.
And when they brought me out, they really liked the knife work, and he had a pretty big group of guys. And the guys in their different states, the instructors underneath him had started to bring me in. So I was getting a good following through that. Of course, I was still doing a lot of government work on the side because having come back from Russia, I ended up doing a lot of work for the three-letter agencies, and that kicked that off for the last 30 years. So I had to work doing that. And then, with the Suarez, that was helping, that was getting it out. And through the forums, I think is really where it spread because there were and then there were some martial arts forums and so forth. And, we used to, poke around in there.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where I think most of the word got out early on was from some of those forums.
And actually, I could see that because if that's the only means of getting your word out, then most of the people, I'm sure, were gravitating to going there for informational purposes and all that. So that would make sense. We do got a question that just came in. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So it's from Brett. I've seen AMOK over the years. May I ask what it stands for? Abbreviation, or is it simply a kind of Viking like, if that's right?
Okay, well, thank you for that question. I appreciate that. Okay, I believe the quality of our life and our training depends on the quality of our questions. Uh, I'm sure that all of you know the term to run amok, which is, pretty soon it's like a suicidal, homicidal rampage. And I began to ask myself, what would it take to survive against that kind of attack? And so really what a mock is the opposite of that, where we have the, excuse me, that same intensity, but with a desire to survive. Because I hear a lot of guys with the tough talk about, oh, skulls and death and blades, and I'm willing to die and all this other stuff. And I can tell you the times in my life when my life was in peril, every cell in my body said, I want to live. And so I wanted to be able to develop something that had the mentality of extreme survival. And
Hmm.
that's why I chose the name Amok. Okay, it's
Okay.
in a market mentality of extreme survival, and our method of training is a result of that.
Nice,
So
nice.
that was a real good question, Brett. Thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so all right. we got like why you wanted to do it. Obviously, it was the best thing you did. I mean, you've had nothing but success. You're renowned in the world as a fantastic martial artist, specializing in knife. I can attest to that. So, I mean, you got to be happy with status quo, right? I mean, best decision you made and did.
Oh, absolutely. There's no status quo where it's stagnant. And whenever you think you're treading water, you're losing ground.
Yeah.
All right. And that's why we must always be seeking greater functionality. It's why I've always done research and what is the biology of skill development and what about psychology and you know, all those levels. Because look, you start with your values and that determines your strategies, and your strategies become your tactics, and the tactics then reveal themselves in your techniques. So, you know, ultimately when you get past learning techniques, you start finding the tactics that drive them, and then you start realizing, well, those tactics that drive those things are dictated by your strategies, and those strategies are formulated by your values. And that's why ultimately I really got down into what are the values, and that's what my next book is about.
Yes, yes. Speaking of which, folks, you got the book here. I'm going to show again, folks. If you don't have this, this is your first book. I mean, get this. This is kind of a whimsical, fun book. And here, and the other book that you got there.
Well, listen, that book, The Joy of Martial Arts, is a thin book. It's an easy read. But if you really look at each page, it's quite profound and insightful, because the template that's in there, what that really does is, here's the thing, guys. Every decision and action that you make are the means to an end. And human beings all share the same 16 ends. How you prioritize them and emphasize them is what creates your unique self. And just as your genetics determine how you look, and how you look, it's affected by your culture and your upbringing, your culture on how you might change your hair and your upbringing and so forth. The same thing is true of our personalities and what drives us. We are genetically inspired. Okay, and that's then affected by our culture and our upbringing. So this is a complete science now, where you can take the test. There's a potential of several billion outcomes. So when you get your profile, it's as unique as your fingerprints. Okay, and that's when I discovered this. I found out about it by Dr. Terpstra. He's a guy that has trained with me for many years, but I trained with him in that aspect of it. And he told me about this Reese profiling and what was that all about. And when I heard what it was all about, I started to investigate it. And then when I did, I realized I have to have this. So I contacted the Reese Foundation, and at the time it was only for licensed therapists. But I asked if I could get into the program, even though I wasn't a licensed therapist, and they weren't sure if I could do it because I didn't have the background. So I asked for a list of books, and I studied those books, and I went and took the test and became the first non-therapist to be a motivation analyst, to be certified to do that. And so what that book presents in there is a template to those 16 different things that we all, those are our motivational levers that we all share. So when people read that book, some of those things will resonate with them more than others, because that's how they as a particular person are prioritized and emphasized in terms of their genetic drives. And that's why that book is actually a primer, an introduction to the next book that I've written, which is The Science of Motivation. Okay. And this is for fighters and coaches and martial artists. And right now I'm just finishing up the footnotes on this, and then I'll have this published as well, because this is it's still somewhat of an easy read because it's not too many pages and so forth, but it's really in depth with being able to understand yourself and others. So that, again, you know, that's how we can better understand ourselves in the pursuit of this activity. And that's why I wrote that book. And I'm real happy to introduce this, because it is a brand new science that we get to introduce into the martial community. And it's not too often that a new science comes along for us, because most everything in martial arts it's not new, it's only new for you. Okay. Yeah. There's not really, a lot new, so to speak, in that regard. And so I'm real happy to be able to introduce this very soon too.
sure it's going
go
to be,
for
another great one. There should be 12
Tim Gillette.
episodes with Tom Sotis each month on your show, Dean. Tim Gillette.
You
No
know,
argument here.
listen, Tim Gillette hosted my first ever edged weapon seminar.
Yeah. Well, like,
First ever.
what
And we've been
year?
92. And we've been very close friends ever since. And in fact, I had a banner made for his school that has his logo and the AMOK logo and saying brothers in training since 92.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, he helped me put the first footprint down, and he has consistently done so all these years. So it just, I can't even begin to thank Tim enough for his
Yeah,
support.
good guy. Yeah, I'm looking forward to next time seeing him too. We're supposed to do something together with Big John.
Well,
Yeah,
Tim, he's got the right values and he lives them.
yeah.
So one of the things I respect about him so much.
No argument. Oh, we got a question from Walter, Tom.
Okay.
Hey, Poe, when will the book be ready when you come up? Will the book be ready when you come up?
I doubt that because the footnotes that going into this book are quite, there's a lot of them.
Okay.
And so I actually need some help doing that. And once I get all of those footnotes done and I have a final version, that has to be sent to the Reese Foundation. And then Mrs. Reese will approve. She already approved the book. She just said,
Okay.
of course, the footnotes have to get done. And then when I get that back, then I'll be able to publish it. So I have a feeling that might not happen until after Christmas.
Okay. So there you go, Walter. But I'm sure Walter, he'll send it to you. Walter, another great guy. All right. Okay. So it sounds like it was the best thing you ever did coming out with that. I'm glad you came up with that. I wouldn't be a trainer under you and all that. So I'm glad you made that decision how many years back. Sounds like it was a great one and you're happy doing it. And now you left us and Florida is so lucky to have you, which I'm not really happy about, but I think Florida is going to benefit you from so much. And I don't want to misconstrue this or come across in a generic way. But when I look at Florida FMA community, I see more stick, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is not a negative comment. I'm bringing it up because I think it's be very refreshing for folks down there who want just knife work with nothing else, and you're down there to seek you out. And so I think it's great for Florida that you're down there. Great for me. It'll be a place to visit and all that. But certainly we're all sad up here that you're gone. But the transplant, how's it been so far?
It's been good. I get down here September 1st, so I've only been here like a month and a half so far. And of course, it's a little slow getting the start because it wasn't really trying to do too much initially. I had so much to do just to get settled. Moving is a little bit more extensive in its tasks than I thought it would be. And but it's been really good. Right off the bat, I have a couple of privates because I had trained them went back in New England, and they're down in this area, and they heard about it and looked me up right away. So they're coming in for training, and I've had a few people reach out and ask me if I'm going to start a Sunday class, and yes, I absolutely will be doing a Sunday class. So anybody who would like to come in twice a month should reach out to me. Now, Jesse Harding from Middletown, Rhode Island, has been with me for many, many years. I don't know, 25, 30 years. I mean, from the very start. Oh, yeah, great guy and very, very skilled. He came down here a few years ago, and he did a seminar with some of the Kenpo people because he's also in a Kenpo system. So he did a seminar for them and did some AMOK, and they really liked it. So when I moved down here, he called him up, Dave Wilson, and said, "Hey, Dave, my teacher's coming right to your backyard." Yeah. And so Dave reached out to me, and we connected, and and he's cut from the same cloth. He's a really, really good guy. And so right off the bat, he came in, we did a workout, he saw it, he's like, "I want this." And so right off the bat, he jumped right into the trainers program, and he set up a seminar at his school. And I posted that a few weeks ago, and we just did another one last Saturday.
That's awesome.
And we've got another one coming out in the next few weeks. He wants to do them regularly because he wants to get his practice group going and so forth. So with that, we have our first solid footprint for another AMOK trainer down here. And I'm just going to keep doing that. I'll do the privates. I'll do a Sunday class twice a month. I'll do local seminars for anybody who wants to do them. And then I'm going to have the first camp with you, Dean. We're going to do that together on the first weekend of March. And we'll do 2 full days of training. We'll both do a half day, 2 days in a row. And I'm really looking forward to doing that together. And so we can pull a bunch of people in and we can give them an introduction to AMOK, and you could show them some of your blade technologies, and we can all share skill and brotherhood and have a meal and bad humor and all of that. So
emphasis on the bad humor.
And the March 1st thing will be every year. I'm going to host an annual camp every single year. And so this will be the first year that we start this.
I'm just humbled, H&H, humble and honored that you're making me inclusive. You could have chose a number of people to do it with you. So grateful and looking forward to it. Can't wait. And we do have a Norman. We're in Florida, so West Palm, correct?
Yeah, I'm in West Palm.
Okay, yeah.
But I travel to do seminars.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
for private school, if you come to me, it's less than if I come to you. But I do private. All I've ever done is privates and seminars, and then I do my Sunday class for the guys that really want to get together.
Well,
I haven't had a school all these years, and I don't intend to have one.
Well, obviously, it's a great formula that you've been making work. So, and Eric says Florida is happy to have you. you prick.
Eric is good friends with my other friend, John Osgood. And it's funny, what a small world that is, because I met John Osgood through my brother, and then come to find out Eric is friends with him. So
okay.
I'm hoping to hook up with Eric pretty soon too.
Okay, we got some comments regarding the dote. All right, we got this. We got dad jokes and puns for the win. All right, and then we got worse jokes better than instructor. Another question. How far is West Palm from St. Petersburg?
My guess is it's about 3.5, maybe 4 hours, depending on the route that you take. Because St. Petersburg is on the other side of the state, almost parallel. So there are routes that kind of go there, but they're not as fast as a highway straight across.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, but Joe Howard, who's been in AMOK for 25 years, is out there, and Raphael is in Orlando. So there'll be times maybe when we jump out to the other side and maybe do a seminar over there if there's enough interest.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, Angelo saying hi.
Hey, Ange, welcome.
Yeah. And Norman is basically substantiating what you just said, 3 to 4 hours. Okay. All right. And so it sounds like everything's agreeing with you down there. The weather, you get up, you got the pool, you got the exercise. Now you're starting to teach. I mean, it looks like you couldn't have wrote a better script for this.
Yeah, things are really coming together because it wasn't just the weather. I wanted a change of lifestyle. And so, it's easy. We live in a resort community. I can walk straight to the fitness center, and then I finish my workout and I go jump in the pool and catch some sun. And, I get that done and get my head square for the day about what I need to accomplish and do, and look at my to-do list. And then I have the day to do what I've got to do. And, after dinner in the evenings, it's still light here till 7:30 and warm. So we can go out and take a nice walk and be on the beach and so forth. And it's a different lifestyle down here, and it really agrees with me.
Yeah, I'm like, I was mentioning before we went live here, it's just like, man, more I'm thinking like, man, I just want to sell everything up here, just go down there. I don't care about running. I don't care. Like it just, yeah, I'm ready, man. I got a question that came over Messenger from Dragon. And his question is, after all these years, what keeps you moving and what are you seeking to achieve or improve in with your own training and skill?
What keeps me moving? Well, getting both my hips replaced last year was big because I needed that before COVID. And then during COVID, none of that happened. So for a few
Yeah.
years before that, my hips were getting worse and worse, and it really compromised my footwork. So that part was a bummer. Though having my footwork compromised made me force my skill levels with my upper body and hands and other things to another whole level. And now that I got my footwork back again, all of that is playing out. So I'm still enjoying feeling that even though I'm 64 now, I laugh and say I feel as good or better than I did when I was 50. And
Awesome.
so with that, my whole thing is I want to teach for as many years as I can do that excellently. I don't want to be that guy who's out on the floor and he's past his ability to be doing what he should be
Mm,
doing. That's not going to be me. By then I'll be doing. By then the AMOK instructors will be doing it, not me,
yeah.
as they're already doing it now. But my goal is to continue researching and learning. And look, the prime directive is seeking greater functionality. So I'm always studying and learning on how we might improve AMOK so that everybody who comes in the door gets the best possible version of that, where they can gain the maximum amount of functionality for the time that they invest. To me, that's very, very important.
Yeah. Okay. No. I know we rarely go really into because the previous episodes where you really dive into what a mug is about, but I think it might be time well spent here for the folks listening who maybe not might know, like the reverse engineering, if you will. Can you speak on that, as far as maybe in relation to the triangles?
Well, look, there are three activities, and there is training, there's practice, and there's opposition. And it's funny that in with what we do, if you ask people what is the difference between practice and training, oftentimes they can't tell you, or you get a very muddled response, or they start with, well, in our school it's like this or that. And I'm like, why isn't it the same for everyone? Or if you ask them, can you define the word technique as it's relevant to us? And you ask 100 people and you'll get 110 different answers. And
Mm,
and that to me is problematical to begin with. It means that we can't really have any really in-depth and clear discussions about things if the most basic terms are not defined and agreed upon. So that's number one. So if we look at that, we got to say, well, opposition for us and for others, it should be that's those activities that we do to increase our functionality, to learn to minimize our mistakes.
mm,
That then dictates how we practice. And the practice is about learning to gain skill with effective techniques. And that's measured by the relationship between the attacks and the counters and the chance of success. If your attack is easy and his counter is hard, you have a positive chance. Those are the high percentage moves. But if your attack is easy and his counter is easy, you'll probably still get each other. If your attack is hard and his counter is hard, you'll probably both muck it up.
mm,
And if your attack is hard and his counter is easy, you're going to lose that exchange. So it's about identifying the high percentage moves, but in practicing in such a way that you're actually gaining skill with those. And to me, that means in the authentic environment, it's spontaneous, adaptive, and forcing you to be 100% attentive. If your practice is not spontaneous, how many practices can you have that are non-spontaneous? Are you thinking to help you in a spontaneous environment?
mm,
So to me, the principles that must be present in every practice is the spontaneity. You have to be attentive, okay, and and it's adaptation to that moment at every moment. If those things are not present, then I don't know what it is you're learning, but it's probably not going to be. It's not going to transplant well into that environment. That's like
mm,
saying, well, yeah, I'm good at doing volleyball, and we volley that back and forth, and then one guy sets it up and the other one spikes it down. Well, that's fine until the game is kind of like volleyball in the water or water polo, and you can't even really swim well. The techniques that first of all, you're not used to dealing with the spontaneity and learning to.
mm,
And one of the big problems is recognition, all right? Because if you can't learn, things come at you fast, real fast, and what hit me? Nobody comes at you slow. Not
mm,
when you're really fighting, not when they're really trying to hit you. And because of that, it's like Major League Baseball. If you can't read that pitcher before he lets go of that ball, you are unlikely to ever hit that ball. Because if you're trying to hit the ball in flight, it's going to pass the plate before you can get the bat off your shoulder. And the same thing is true that if your practices are not demanding, if they're not off time and demanding recognition and deliberate in their responses, number one, you're not building the recognition to be able to see it early enough to act on it. Typically, you only get to react to it, or you've missed it and you got hit, right? So when you look at that, it's like, number one, recognition is real big. And if your practices aren't demanding that and building it into your skill, then it's unlikely those techniques you're going to be able to pull them off in real time against a non-compliant adversary.
Okay.
And then the other thing is deliberateness, all right? And if you're not deliberate in your action, no myelin is being secreted. You're not actually building biological skill, the muscle memory that is the holy grail of martial arts. And it is the reason that so many other activities, somebody gets good for a short time or a period of time, and then they plateau. And, you know, I often ask this question, does repetition create skill? And the answer is only the deliberate ones. The remainder just burn calories. So that's why we have opposition to minimize our mistakes and to increase our functionality. We have practice so that we can practice effective techniques and gain skill. And then lastly, we have training. And training is about having more efficient movement and being able to improve our capacity. Because it's one thing to know what you should be able to do and to gain skill at that, but your skill will be limited if your body's capacity is limited in its ability to deliver it. Okay, and that's what training is all about. Practice is about the move, training is about your movement. And that's all distance, timing, and mechanics. Those three things come together on that triangle. That's why, and look, by the way, if you get in a fight out in the street and you get hit by something and that really sucked, when you get back to your training, what's the first thing you do?
You look at why you got hit.
And you want to work on making sure that never happens to you again. And that's why in AMOK, we fight first, because the results of that fight should then dictate how you practice and how you train. And that's why those things are all about how you can continue developing and building your own skill time after time so that your functionality continues to improve. Otherwise, it's like learning basketball footwork and football plays to play a soccer game. If your training doesn't match your practice and your practice doesn't match the fight, just how functional do you expect to get with that?
No. That's why I just,
somebody once asked me and they said, do you know who Edgar Salite was? And I said, sure. The guy was like incredible. He was Guru Dave's teacher. And they said, well, if you think your method was better than him, why aren't you doing that? And I said, it's not a reflection on LeMayco in any way. My contention is that if Mr. Salite had utilized our method, not changing the techniques or anything they did, I said, then he would beat me even faster. And that, you see what I mean? So the method is all about the how quickly can you actually integrate skill? And this is why Leo Fong made the comment, because AMOK is a method of integration. We use the knife to pick that up. But, you could use that for volleyball or any other competitive type of activity, because it's about that integration of natural skill. And if you really don't understand that, you're going to plateau early. You're going to do a lot of work and not really get better. And then those guys go out to try to learn another system and more drills, and they become accumulators because they're not functionalists, because their method is inherently dysfunctional.
The circle functionality, dysfunctional, disconnected, right? And can you speak? I mean, music to my. I just love anytime you speak on this. It's just as well as any of us AMOKs folks do. We can listen to you all day. Can you speak on the congruency between now? Would you start with the fight first, right? And then, okay, you have some deficient things to work on. Partner up with somebody, practice. These are things you can do on your own. Training, but the overall congruency between all that.
Well, yeah, look, once you understand tactics, you start seeing the attacking tactics, or the core tactics are single attacks, combination attacks, faking attacks, and grabbing attacks. So once you get through that, and then you do the counters as well, which for us are like jump backs, hold your grounds with passes and stops, grabs and disarms. Well, once you get past that, it's like, well, okay, now what? How do we improve our performance? Well, number one, we duel, and we've worked out a really good way of dueling so that when you make a mistake, that you suffer the same tactical consequence that you may if that were a live blade. And then we look at sparring, and dueling and sparring are very different because dueling is about gaining fighting experience, where sparring is really to experiment. So there's two different purposes for that oppositional activity. Okay, and the yardstick of measure are two very different things. So because of that, then we can go, okay, well, I know how to duel, and I've been sparring to experiment and work with the different configurations of which stance is forward, what hand does he hold the blade in, what hold is he in, what heights are we at, all of those things that you need to learn in the natural adjustments. But after that, usually, and that's by the third class in AMOK. First, you learn tactics, then you learn dueling, and then you learn sparring. So in 3 classes, you will learn the whole game. And after that, I say, well, after that, it's about your performance. How do we get better? Well, let's go back to the beginning. Where did we start with tactics, singles, combos, fakes, and grabs? Let's start with singles. How about if when we spar with each other, we start moving around and we only use singles when we attack? No combos, no fakes, no grabs. Isolating that single and make sure that we do that in a purely authentic way. We are in the water, so to speak, not on the volleyball court. And in doing so, it requires you to have recognition, and we have true timing and ability that comes in there. Now that we work those singles, how do we improve what we're doing with that? Well, that becomes the platform for practice. We isolate the single, and then we practice those singles. And there's a way in which the AMOKs use that so that the coach can help the other person practice those singles so that it's not done in a haphazard or incomplete way. And then after we have done that, I would say, okay, well, when you did single strikes, how about if we look at training? So if you go home and you're going to do that solo, how can we look at developing our ability to deliver those single strikes? And that's when we would go over the mechanics of striking and how to look at ideal mechanics so that you learn control over that. And then learning how to morph that so that you can do fully extended strikes and compacted strikes and so forth. So that you go, wait a minute, we isolated singles, we practiced singles, and we trained singles. And then when you come back, we're going to isolate combos, practice combos, train combos. And this is the congruency between those 3 activities. If you reverse them and you do basketball footwork and football plays for a soccer game, no, we put it back the other way and go, the soccer game, well, we're going to have soccer footwork and soccer plays for a soccer game. Right. And it sounds like that makes such perfect sense. But when you see how few other methods on the face of the earth do that, it's kind of shocking. And, you know, a strange thing, when beginners come to me that have never done any kind of a martial art, and they see that congruency in AMOK, and it makes perfect sense, and it works great. And I ask them, what if these things were backwards, and what if they didn't match up? And they go, well, that's kind of stupid. Who would do that? From the Alpha Babes. And I say, so it's not a reflection on who does that if they're enthusiasts. Okay, correct. But if they're functionalists, well, that's a problem.
If they're functionalists, right? You're separating that. Correct. Okay.
Right, yeah. Right. Because look, if you're an enthusiast, it doesn't matter if it doesn't work.
Yeah, because you're right. You're doing the art, and you're just passing on what was given to you, and there you go. Yeah.
Right. You should do what you enjoy, and then that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's the yardstick of measure. But for functionalists, we have a different value system, and it matters.
Yeah.
And it has to matter.
Yeah, it has to matter, right? For integrity, like you mentioned, integrity to self, honesty to others, and so forth, especially with knives.
Lives are at stake.
Yeah.
And if it was somebody that you love and asked you for knife training, would you teach them second best because you enjoyed it? Or would you teach them what you know works because you've put it to the test consistently and you get a consistent positive result against an adversary who's actually coming at you with full intent?
With full intent.
Thank you, Burrow Dave.
Yeah, I know, God.
Okay,
guys,
so
if you're under...
Look, it keeps coming back.
Yeah.
So that's why those 3 activities and the congruency is that the opposition should match the training, should match the practice, should match the training, and those 3 things need to be congruent. And if they're not, then there's a breakdown. I mean, back in 95, I wrote about these principles in my thesis in my Kenpo system, asking the same thing. How come we start with the 8-point blocking system, a couple of punches and then a kick, and then when it comes to the form, all we have is a block punch and a block punch. And then when it comes to self-defense, instead of learning to do the blocks and punches back that we just learned all those basics from, we're doing like combination 6 or doing this other thing. And we're not even using those tools. I'm like, if I learn these blocks and these punches, why aren't we then learning to practice with those to make them work? And then when we get up to fight and do that too. And, people are like, well, that's not the art. And I'd say, I understand, but you guys are telling me you're trying to improve the art, right? That because the systems that I run said that they were seeking to improve. And I go, and here's a major way in which we can improve that. Why would you skip over the beginning of that when you give somebody those blocks or parries and those strikes, and then completely discard them when it comes to at that same rank, then teaching them the self-defense moves? Why wouldn't you start there? And you know what? I've never gotten a good answer from anyone other than, well, that's the way our system does it. And I go, well, if you're looking to improve, I mean, there it is. And that simple principle brought all the way through. Dave Elliott out in Hawaii and Koki and those guys, when I introduced that to them, they turned around and they started, and they said, well, we need to make like 4 themes Kenpo, to use the themes to get them all down and to build
4 themes. Okay. Yeah.
So they took the art that they had and just used those principles to apply it and restructured it that way so it would be more functional.
I could definitely see
it. Art. It didn't change the blocks and the strikes and the kicks.
No, right. Yeah. We got a nice comment from Maynard. Tom Sotis is probably one of the most well-informed men in FMA discussion.
Oh, thank you. That's
no
very
argument here. No argument here, Maynard. And we got Dog Brother, Growling Dog, saying hello. Funny guy out of Canada. And then, here's a great question. Oh, my goodness. Norman, thank you. I think you're going to enjoy this, Tom. Can we both be enthusiast and functionalist?
Well, you can be enthusiastic about being a functionalist, but they are 2 very different value systems, because in functionality, that's the task determines the work. You don't get to say, yeah, but I like doing that other thing. If you're an enthusiast, you get to do what you like. All right. But if you're a functionalist, you have to do what's required. And therein is a very important line of demarcation, because I've had a lot of guys say to me, well, I've been doing this and that, and I'd really like to be more functional. And then when they come in and I show them what they have to do to be more functional, then they go, well, we like doing that other thing. And I say, no, you know what? You like doing that other thing, and your students like it because you like it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to be functional, you can see that you have to discard or change these things completely and do some other things in a very different way. All right. And if you're not willing to make that change, then you're not willing to cross the line from enthusiast into functionality. And some of those guys said, yep. And then they come back and they become functionalists. Another guy said, thank you. And they go back to being an enthusiast. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's a value system, and you can't hold conflicting values simultaneously.
Yeah. And I think most are not even aware of that they're holding conflicting values simultaneously,
Well, they're not aware until they realize what it is they have to do. And then they're faced with the decision of, do I make the change to become more functional or do I not?
Right.
And for the most part, they like what they're doing. Their students like what they're doing. And mainly I tell them too, look, because they're like, well, my guys like doing that. And I say, well, you know what? If you went back and you were full of all kinds of enthusiasm and said, hey, look at these new exciting drills that I learned, and they make us even better. If you're happy in doing it, your students will follow that too.
Right. Because you're bringing enthusiasm.
And you can't blame it on his students.
Yeah. Yeah. John Kuspis, Big John, the 4 themes are the key to functional freedom. That's from Big John. We also, isn't that the original intent of martial arts? Robert, if you don't mind, if you could just expand on that. Isn't that the original intent of martial arts? If you can, Robert, just so I can present it to Tom. And what we got here, and then we got the comments are just rolling in. I wish there were more that think critically about the art they are studying. Then we would have a whole bunch of people like Tom Sotis. Absolutely, Maynard.
Thank you
Maynard
for that
fan.
comment.
Yeah, it's true. You brilliant
Well,
enthusiast.
I think I can answer that question.
Which
Or
one?
his statement is that the original intention of martial arts.
Okay, go ahead. Sure.
Here's the thing about the absurd irony of humanity is that we group together to survive, within which we kill each other. Okay.
Hmm.
So, when you look at this, people talk about martial arts and go, well, where does martial arts begin and who started martial arts? And I say, you know what? Martial arts and the survival of humanity are as interwoven as thirst and water. All right. The very reason that people had developed any fighting systems wherever they were is because they needed to protect themselves from the inhabitants and animals in that area, and specifically other humans. And so different arts in different areas would develop according to those. Let's look at the word culture.
Okay.
And if we look at the word culture and think of it in this terms, culture means how we get the work done. Now, why do we have different cultures all over the world? Well, if you look at the environments within which people group together to survive, well, if you lived in a foresty area or a desert area or a jungle area or whatever your environment was like, well, when you group together and we'd say, hey, you're going to get the water and you're going to get the this and you're going to do that and you'll hunt and you know what, everybody had their job and it was about the group being able to survive. And that is why the cultures are different all over the world. How they build their homes, how they get their water, how they get their food, how do they protect themselves from the elements, how do they protect themselves from animals, and how do they protect themselves from each other. And just as our homes and our food and all of those things are different in every culture, so are the martial arts. Martial arts evolved throughout humanity in every culture. Just that later on, because of the way we see them, and we see how the Japanese did theirs and the Chinese did theirs, and we have kung fu and karate and samurai. Well, we're seeing cultural arts.
Right.
All right, but those arts were developed at the time that those forces were upon them and forced it into that. And if you take that out of that culture and transplant it into another, it may or may not be functional for survival in that environment or against those types of attacks and so forth. And that's why martial arts are as widely varied as food,
Yes.
as culinary. Okay, the culinary arts and the martial arts, they go hand in hand too. They're both about survival.
Nice. Yeah, nice analogy. Oh, here's Renee Growling Dog is a funny guy. Dean Franco started martial arts. The guy is just, I'm telling you, you want to see a funny guy, Tom? This guy is just, oh my gosh. Okay,
I can
Dan,
appreciate
he is, oh, we got another, okay. Hello, Tom, from Maynard. Can you share some material, essays, research books that informs your perspective?
that. Can you share some material, essays, or research books that informed you? Well, I would say to begin with, the book that I wrote on the way of tactics.
Okay.
Because
So
that really has the information in there that's relative to what we talked about. It
right here,
talks
Maynard.
about the 16 values. It talks about pre-examining your will and strategy. It then discusses tactics, and we talk about the training and things that go along with that. And so that's the reason that I wrote that book, is because that's like a collection of and a distillation of all of the research I've ever done.
Yeah. Yeah, Maynard, I highly recommend it. We can still on Amazon, correct?
Sure, yeah. Just
Okay.
put my name
Okay.
into Amazon and those two books come up.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to see. Okay. Yeah. So go to
And by the way,
Amazon, Maynard.
if anybody is really interested in our approach to see what that looks like, if you come to the website at amok.global and you see where it says videos and you go down there, you'll see one on methodology. And methodology, by the way, methodology is the study of methods. and it compares and contrasts different methods of approach and what the learning curves are. And then we go into the AMOK method, why it is the way that it is. That way, if you're only interested in the method, you can get those videos. But also then there's the AMOK core skills. So if you want to see how that plays out in AMOK, in other words, what's it like when you walk in the door? What's the first lessons like? What is it like to learn, okay, the tactics, and then dueling, and then the sparring, okay, and then to be able to go on to practice and then training. All of those, and look, it's $10 a month. You get 30 videos that show you the core skills. So for $10, you can decide if you want to keep it or if you want to cancel it. I mean, you know, that's a pretty cheap way to really take a look at what it is that I've spent my life developing.
Yeah. So, folks, that's amokglobal.com. I'll put that in there.
No, it's not. It's amok.global.
Amok.global, sorry.
Global is the end, not .com. It's amok.global.
Amok.global. Okay. Okay. So, you got the other book coming out. You're starting classes down there. It's starting to pick up. Your name's starting to get out there from folks who realize that you're moved down there. I'm sure it's going to pick up even more and all that. I'm sure after this episode, you're going to hear from folks too. So the camp. Let's just talk a little on the camp. So, folks, if you're watching camp, we talked about briefly March 1st, our first weekend in March, correct?
First weekend in March. We'll do a Saturday and a Sunday. I'm not yet sure exactly where the location will be. It might be in Wellington at Dave's school. It may not. It depends on how many people are going to come and so forth and what we're going to do. But yeah, look, we're going to have a great weekend. Yeah. You know, usually, we come in and we'll do like a 9 to 12 session. We break for lunch and we come back and we maybe do 1 to 4. Saturday night, everybody gets together and, we all have dinner together and, get that brotherhood thing going. And then Sunday, we repeat the whole thing. Nice. And by the way, West Palm Beach is a relatively small airport, even though it's West Palm International, Palm Beach International. So it's real easy to get in and out of. Yeah. Okay. And going to Miami and Fort Lauderdale, of course, anyone's welcome to fly anywhere they want.
Miami is.
But if you're looking for flights, you definitely want to check the West Palm Beach because it's easy in and out.
And we have another trainer, AMOK, saying hi, Eric Maynard.
Eric, what a great guy. Eric's been with me, I don't know, 20 years maybe.
Yeah, Eric, good guy.
Yeah, very, very consistent in his training. He's done seminars for years. He's been in the Sunday class for longer than I can remember. He's consistently done privates all these years, and he's very highly skilled in some other methods as well, too. So that's the other thing you'll find out about the AMOK trainers and instructors. They almost all have a very diverse background in training.
That's true. That's very true.
Certainly Eric is one of them. I'm very proud when Eric represents our system for sure. Our method.
I just want folks to know too is that you're so open to change. Like, in other words, some of these systems, there's the reluctancy to even approach the instructor or the grandpa, whatever it's coined, depending on the system and all that, to bring a possibility of an idea or a suggestion and like that. And you've always been like so open to that, like with me and Big John working on the knife grappling and all that. Like some folks, oh no, that's not part of it. We don't need to look at that. You know what I mean? But you've always been so receptive to like the evolution and growing and improving status quo. And I think that's also so refreshing in your outlook on that.
Well, look, none of us is as smart as all of us. And I didn't want AMOK in and of itself as a method to be limited to what I was bringing to the table. I have so many guys that come into training with diverse backgrounds that are intelligent guys and good fighters. Why? And if we all lived together somewhere and our culture was to say, hey, by the way, we got to protect ourselves from the tribes around us, we would certainly be open to those ideas.
Integrating, absolutely, right?
Absolutely. So, and that's where that comes from. And, when it comes to the groundwork, look, I got a lot of screws and metal in my neck. So there's limited groundwork that I can do. And that's why when you guys were doing that, I was like, great, you guys can help so that it's, we can work that all out and we can find out through the AMOK method what's functional, what isn't, and how to practice and train it and so forth, so that everybody can benefit from that. This is an example of how AMOK has to be better than me, better than what I bring to the table. It's not about me.
Yeah, it's so, I know, it's just such a refreshing
It's
thing. And
about the brotherhood.
it's so much fun working with Big John. Huh?
Here's the thing about Big John. Big John he has his name because he's big. And Big John has trained for many, many years. The thing is, John is wicked intelligent too, because he has asked me some of the most challenging questions that anybody has ever asked. And his questions have really forced me to think hard about things. And some of my growth and understanding came from his questions. So I always feel like John is one of the great contributors to AMOK because of his questions
He's just
and his
scary.
background and training. And of course, anybody who has to face Big John knows that that's why we invented blades, because when you get a guy who's that big who can fight, what chance do you have if you don't have a major equalizer like a blade?
Holy crap, man. When folks saw the pictures of me on the ground with him, they were like, what the hell are you doing, man? What are you trying to prove? I'm like, I picked the biggest mother to find out if this stuff's going to work or not.
You look like a rhesus monkey being squished by a silverback.
I love that guy, though. He's so, what? At the end of the day, he's such a good guy. You know what I mean? He's just, I wish I could see him more,
He's sincere and authentic. You get the real John. There's no BS about him. I gotta love that about him.
Oh my God, I
Oh,
know.
God.
Yeah, Big John. But well, this has been absolutely awesome. Like, okay, for the community, for the FMA community, martial art community, knife community, any thoughts of wisdom or
No, all of the above. All I can say is, guys, I love to do this, and I love to share. I love to learn what other people are doing. And now that I'm down here in Florida, I'm really hoping to meet more guys that are interested in training and what they're doing in their arts, and get together and learn from each other and have some fun. I mean, that's what this whole thing is all about.
Yeah.
I do my thing, you do your thing. I mean, we both don't have to cook the same meals for us to want to sit down and eat.
I tell you, Florida's just so lucky to have you. Again, not just so much I don't think they have a lot of knife guys down there, but just your whole approach and mindset. I just think folks down there are going to love it. And I hope they take full advantage of training with you. If they don't, I'm sorry. That's stupidity if they don't do
Well,
it.
look, anyone can find me. I'm easy to find on Facebook, and you can just reach out to me. And if somebody's interested, come on by the house, and we go down to the garage, and we'll do a little workout. And if it's not your cup of tea, at least we've made new friends. And if it is, well, then we get even more to do. So to me, it's always win-win when we get together with new guys. So
And
I
you got
really
that
encourage
crazy.
anyone who's interested to see what AMOK is about to touch base with me.
Yeah, they absolutely should. And again, folks, I'll show the book more at the end, but put down there also your website, guys. $10 a month, and it's just stupid money. I mean, but always a pleasure having you on. Thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, listening to you, and looks like I'm going to be seeing you pretty soon. I'm going to fly down there and hopefully.
Right on. Yeah, we'll be doing it. But Dean, first, let me say thank you for the opportunity to reach out doing this. I mean, you've done 400 and change of these, and your expertise in terms of leading that along has just been fantastic. I've watched you grow with this over time, and you're doing a great job with it. You've contributed so much to the FMA community by doing this and doing it well for so long. So I have a lot of respect for what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I'm really looking forward to more of that. So thank you for the opportunity. I want to thank everybody who sat to listen through some of this and through the questions and comments that you made. Thanks very much, folks. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope that we all get to meet together and train together very soon.
Absolutely. And again, well, I'm going to be in touch, of course, with you, giving you when I'm going to be coming down. I wouldn't mind meeting you again. Friday, do Mondays seem to be a good day as far as meeting with you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, really. My schedule is fairly wide open. And by the way, I'm doing online training and stuff like that too. So if you don't live near me and you can't come
Yeah,
by,
folks. Okay. Yeah,
we can still do this online too. So just absolutely anybody who wants to do this, just reach out.
absolutely. All right. Well, I'll be in touch again. Thank you. I feel like having you on is just such an honor. So,
Well,
but hey,
thanks very much.
you enjoy that weather and that tough life down there. Okay.
I'm off to it. Probably head to the pool a little bit later.
Oh, it
Still light out there. Yeah,
sounds
so
terrible.
really, thanks so much for the opportunity to speak with everybody today. I really appreciate it.
All right. I'll be in touch. You take care.
Bye bye.
Right. All right, folks. Again, this book, if you don't have it, highly suggest you get it. Okay. And okay, to get a hold of Tom, you get my Facebook Messenger, $10. You get access to those videos. AMOK.global, the website, everything's on there. What else? What else? Obviously, yeah, he's in Florida. Best way to get a hold of him, though, is I think Facebook Messenger, and he will return your messages. He's very good about that. Again, trendsetter. Just, I think he's just brilliant. You know what I mean? And talk to anybody that's involved in a muck. They'll tell you the same thing. Far as so that camp, all that looks like that's something he's going to want to do on a yearly basis, and that's going to be the first one's going to be this year in March. So if you're in Florida, more news will come out about that as we get closer to that. But be a great opportunity for you to get to meet Tom if you haven't already, if you're living down there and haven't met him yet. But other than that, reach out to him. You won't regret it. All right. So I will see you guys next time. Thank you, everybody that watched and commented. Who is next? Who is next? Oh, I think Friday, kind of on two guys who talking about, again, why they created their own system. I think it's going to be Errol and Dog Brother Badger, I believe. But I will double check. But I think that's going to be Friday at 7 o'clock. But you'll see it pinned in the FMA discussion on the pin post there. I got your slippers. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get those back. Maybe when I go see Chad's camp, I get my sandals back, Eric. All right, folks. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.